Chosen one. Your calling begins where most people quit. While others turn back at the first sign of difficulty, you were designed to rise in the places others fall. This is not just a video. It's a reminder, a prophecy, a spiritual awakening. Stay until the very end. Every word you hear is a message meant for your soul in this very moment. And if something stirs within you, if something awakens as you listen, let it move through you. Let it remind you of your power. Watch this video all the way through, and when you're done, write your warmest, most heartfelt wish in the comments, followed by the number 77. That number is not random. It carries the frequency of divine support, alignment, and activation. Your wish will not go unheard. Now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive deeper. There's a moment that separates the chosen from the crowd, and it never announces itself with fanfare. It comes quietly, on the edge of exhaustion, in the pit of despair, in the stillness after you've given everything you have and still feel like you're not enough. That is where your calling begins. Not when you're full of motivation, but when you're emptied out. Not when you're celebrated, but when you're completely unseen. Because the true calling doesn't start where it's easy. It starts where it hurts. And that's exactly where most people stop. But not you. You were not born to be comfortable. You were born to be transformed. You were made to climb the mountain everyone else walked around. You were designed for the path that demands everything. Your time, your hope, your belief, your surrender. That is the mark of the chosen. Not that you always feel strong, but that you keep showing up even when everything inside you is breaking. You stay in the fire long enough to become forged by it, and every scar becomes a scripture written on your soul. This is the paradox of destiny. It doesn't reveal itself in comfort. It shows itself in crisis. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't wait for applause. It rises in silence. And when most people quit, you awaken. Because something in your spirit knows this pain has purpose. This confusion has context. This delay is not a denial. It is a sacred preparation. Everything you've endured was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to unveil you. Chosen one, this life is not random. You are not wandering. You are being led. Every detour, every heartbreak, every moment of silence, it was all part of the sacred design. And now, at this very point in your journey, you are standing where most people give up. But your presence here means you're not one of them. You are not part of the many. You are part of the few. The ones who rise when it would be easier to fall. The ones who press forward when everything says to turn back. This is not just about survival. It's about becoming. And yes, your wishes are part of this. The dreams you carry, the ones you barely whisper even to yourself, are not hallucinations. They are echoes of what's already written in the fabric of your soul. But they are not free. They require transformation, not just of circumstances, but of you. Because in order to receive what is meant for you, you must become who you were always meant to be. And that journey will often take you through valleys that look like defeat before you arrive at the peaks of fulfillment. So when the road gets dark, remember, it's not a sign to quit. It's a sign that you're close. When the pressure increases, it's not because you're failing, it's because you're being formed. You are no longer who you used to be. You are in transition between old wounds and new wisdom, between survival and sacred alignment. This place is uncomfortable because you are shedding what cannot go with you into the next chapter, and yet the world keeps telling you to stop. It tells you you're too late, too tired, too broken. too different. But let me tell you something the world forgot. Your difference is your destiny. Your path was never meant to match anyone else's. Your journey is not linear. It's layered, like ancient scripture, etched in silence. And every setback you've experienced was a summons, not to quit, but to awaken. You are not fragile. You are refined. You are not abandoned. You are anointed. You are not waiting. You are becoming. And this process, it's not punishment. It's preparation. For what's coming next is too big to rest on unstable foundations. That's why you've been shaken. That's why so much has crumbled. Not because it was over, but because it wasn't strong enough to carry what's next. Chosen one, you have been walking through fire and wondering why no one else is burning. But that's because you were meant to be purified. You were meant to walk through what others couldn't survive, not to punish you, but to set you apart. Because your voice will carry healing. Your presence will carry peace. Your wisdom will break cycles. And none of that is possible without the depth you've walked through. This is your moment of activation, not the kind the world recognizes, but the kind that heaven honors. When you choose to keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's right. When you stop begging for signs and start becoming the sign. When you no longer wait for the path, but realize you are the path. When the voice in your soul grows louder than the voices of doubt. This is the moment where your calling begins, where most people quit, but you rise. And if you've read this far, it's not by accident. It means you're ready. Not perfect, not fully prepared, but ready. Ready to take the step that scares you. Ready to let go of what no longer serves you. Ready to believe, really believe, that your life is about to become something sacred. And not because you forced it, but because you refused to quit. You were not chosen to start when things feel light. You were chosen to endure the weight most cannot carry. This is why you've always felt the tension deep inside, like something greater was being asked of you, even when no one else could see it. Even in the quiet moments, even in the chaos, something kept pulling you forward. That pull wasn't your imagination. It was your purpose, demanding your attention. It doesn't shout. It doesn't bargain. It simply waits. And when the noise of the world fades, when the illusions fall away, it rises from within and whispers, "Now." Now is when you step into it. Not because you're ready, but because you're willing. Most people build their lives around comfort. They avoid the edge, the unknown, the sacred discomfort that transforms. But not you. You've stood at the edge and felt your soul whisper, "Jump." Not into recklessness, but into truth, into the raw honesty of becoming who you really are. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it's uncertain. But this is your fire. This is where you forge resilience, conviction, and spiritual armor. You don't build those in moments of ease. You build them when it's just you, your breath, and the choice to continue walking even when everything inside you screams to stop. Chosen one, there are two versions of yourself living inside you, the one shaped by fear and the one shaped by purpose. Every moment you choose to keep going when it gets hard, you silence the fear-based self. You take away its authority. You claim your own. The version of you that wants to turn back isn't your enemy. It's your invitation. An invitation to outgrow what no longer fits. The fear isn't here to destroy you. It's here to reveal you. When you stand in front of fear long enough, something incredible happens. It no longer commands you. You begin to realize that fear is only as powerful as your belief in it. That's where the world changes, not outside, but within. You are not the same person who once questioned everything. You've walked through too many shadows, cried through too many nights, and stood through too many storms to ever be the same again. And that's a gift, because with each trial, you became more. Not more in the eyes of others, but more in truth, more aligned, more whole. And in that wholeness, you stop needing to be understood. You stop chasing approval. You begin to move like the ocean, powerful, silent, and unstoppable, not because you want to be seen, but because you were born to move things. When others speak of endings, you see beginnings. When others see walls, you see the chance to evolve. That's what separates you. You don't just endure the hard moments, you are activated by them. While others use their struggle as a reason to stop, you use it as a reason to dig deeper, to pull from wells inside yourself you didn't even know existed. You awaken your inner warrior not with noise, but with presence, with breath, with the still conviction that you were not brought this far to be broken now. You were not called into existence to live a half-hearted life. You were made for more, and your calling begins the moment you remember that. There is a sacred energy that surrounds those who don't quit, a power the world cannot explain but can feel. People will sense it in you. They won't know what to call it, but they'll feel your presence shift the atmosphere. Not because you speak louder, but because you carry something they've forgotten. A fire that does not die in the dark. That fire is your calling, and it doesn't burn you, it purifies you. It turns your pain into purpose, your silence into wisdom, your scars into sacred symbols of resilience. Every time you rise again, that fire grows stronger. Every time you choose truth over comfort, it burns brighter. You'll notice something else too. As you continue, the path will narrow. Fewer will walk with you. Many will stop and try to convince you to do the same. But that's not your path. You didn't come here to blend in. You came to break through. The loneliness you feel is not rejection. It's realignment. It's life making space around you so you can hear your soul more clearly. It's the universe asking, can you still walk when it's only your feet on the ground? And you can, because you've walked this way before, and every step you take alone becomes sacred ground for someone else to follow one day. You don't need the light to move forward. You are the light. You don't need the crowd to keep going. You are the current. You don't need proof to believe. You are the proof. You are what happens when someone listens to the whisper within instead of the noise outside. You are what happens when courage outweighs comfort, when faith outweighs fear, when devotion outweighs distraction. This is what makes you chosen. Not perfection, not popularity, but the unwavering choice to keep walking when everyone else stops. That is your power. That is your beginning. This is the line where most people quit, but not you, because you know that behind this line, your destiny begins. Not someday, not after the fear passes, not when it's easy, but now, here, exactly where you are. This is the starting point, not despite the struggle, but because of it. This is where you shed the expectations placed on you. This is where you let go of timelines, pressures, and false identities. This is where you become who you were always meant to be. Not someone who waits for the perfect conditions, but someone who creates from the chaos. And in that creation, something sacred is born. A life not driven by fear, but by alignment. A life not built for the world's approval, but for your soul's truth. A life that inspires not because it's flawless, but because it's honest, raw, real. You carry that power now. It's in your breath, your presence, your persistence. It grows every time you choose to begin where others quit. This is not the end. This is your becoming. There comes a point on every sacred path where the weight becomes unbearable for most. Not because the journey is impossible, but because it demands the one thing many refuse to give: the old self. That's what your calling asks of you. Not just your time, not just your effort, but your transformation. It doesn't want your mask, it wants your essence. And to offer that, you must walk through a fire that strips away all illusions. Most turn back at the edge of that fire. But you, chosen one, you walk through it. Not because it's easy, but because your soul knows there's no life for you in pretending anymore. You were never meant to stay small. That quiet ache you feel when you shrink to fit in. That restless stirring in your spirit when you play it safe. That's not anxiety. That's alignment trying to call you home. The world trained you to call it fear, but your soul knows better. That ache is the stretching of your wings inside the cage you've outgrown. And when the pain of staying tight becomes louder than the fear of flying, something incredible happens. You begin to break free. Not suddenly, not loudly, but truthfully. One honest step at a time. One brave breath after the next. Most people see resistance as a sign to stop. But you are learning that resistance is not rejection. It's refinement. It's the universe testing your devotion. Will you keep showing up, even when it's not glamorous? Will you trust the invisible path, even when the noise of doubt surrounds you? Will you keep rising, even when your knees shake from all you've carried? These are the sacred questions life asks before it hands you the key to your next level. And your answers don't come from words. They come from your steps, from your presence, from the way you keep going when there's no spotlight, no applause, no guarantee. Because here's the truth: most people only keep going when it's working. But the chosen keep going even when there's no sign. You don't walk by outcome, you walk by alignment. You don't serve for reward, you serve because your soul signed a contract that your mind is only now beginning to understand. You said yes to something eternal. Something no paycheck, no follower count, no recognition could ever measure. You said yes to the hard road, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you know that everything sacred is born from sacrifice, from presence, from devotion, from daring to be seen by yourself even when no one else is looking. And yes, there will be moments when it feels like too much. Moments when the tears fall silently into the space where dreams used to live. Moments when your hands shake and your heart whispers, maybe this is the end. But in that moment, something inside you always answers, not yet. Not because you're invincible, but because your soul remembers. Remembers the reason, remembers the vision, remembers the vow you made in the silence long before you ever spoke it out loud. That vow lives in your bones, and it cannot be broken, not by time, not by fear, not by exhaustion. You weren't sent here to run. You were sent here to remember, to awaken, to rebuild the world with your presence. Every time you rise after breaking, you teach the universe how love wins. Every time you breathe through the chaos, you become the calm others are searching for. Every time you stay when it's hard, speak when it's risky, move when it's unclear, you become living proof that transformation is real. Not because you've mastered life, but because you've surrendered to it. You've stopped trying to control every outcome and started trusting your alignment more than your fear. That trust is your power. It's what turns the invisible into the inevitable. When you walk in alignment long enough, the world begins to bend around your belief. Doors appear that were once invisible. Support rises where you once stood alone. The things you thought you had to chase begin to find you, not because you finally earned them, but because you finally became a match for them. You didn't achieve your way into your destiny. You aligned with it. And that alignment only came because you dared to walk where others stopped. And that's the thread that connects everything. You dared. You dared to go deeper, to look inward when the world screamed outward, to become what you couldn't yet see. You dared to hold space for the version of you that wasn't finished yet, and to love them through the fire. That's courage. That's strength. And that's exactly why you're still here. You've survived what was meant to silence you. You've outlived what was sent to break you. And now, you stand at the threshold again. Not because you're failing, but because you're rising to a new level. Chosen one, this is the pattern of ascension. Breakdown, awakening, becoming. Again and again. The path isn't straight, it's a spiral. With each turn, you return to the same place, but with a deeper truth, a stronger heart, a clearer knowing. Don't resent the cycles. Revere them. They are proof you're evolving, proof you're getting closer to the core. And the closer you get, the more the world will test your roots, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because the higher the calling, the deeper the roots must grow. Otherwise, the light will shatter you. But you are not fragile. You are not temporary. You were built for this, crafted in the image of divine endurance, not just to withstand, but to alchemize. Every delay you've faced has been a forge. Every heartbreak, a hammer. Every silence, a sculptor's hand. And now, you are becoming the masterpiece your younger self once dreamed of. The one who didn't quit. The one who kept going. The one who finally understood. My calling didn't begin when I was ready. It began when I refused to give up. You are on sacred ground. Not someday, not later, right now. With every breath, you are writing a legacy. With every step, you are shifting the world. Not with noise, not with force, but with alignment, with presence, with unwavering truth. Keep walking. The path is narrow, but it is yours. The pain is real, but so is your power. The road is steep, but so is your purpose. And it all begins here, exactly where most people quit. What most never realize is that the path you've chosen doesn't just build strength, it reveals truth. And not the kind of truth that can be taught in books or shouted from stages. This is the kind of truth that whispers through your bones when you've lost everything external and still decide to stand. It's the kind that arrives in silence after every storm, when no one else is looking, and you have to ask yourself, who am I without the noise, without the success, without the safety net? That question terrifies most, but not you. You've learned to sit with it, to let it scrape away what's false, and leave behind only what's real. Chosen one, your calling begins where most people quit, not because it's more glamorous there, but because it's more sacred. It's quieter, it's deeper, it's where the illusion of control fades, and all that's left is surrender. Most can't stand that kind of emptiness, but you've come to understand that in that stillness, everything changes. When you stop filling the silence, it begins to speak. When you stop rushing, the truth begins to catch up. And when you stop needing to be seen, you finally start to see. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're in a metamorphosis. And while the world worships speed, you're learning the holiness of slow, deliberate evolution. Because growth that lasts doesn't come in sparks. It comes in seasons. It doesn't scream. It hums. And it doesn't show up when you feel strong. It arrives when you're willing to be vulnerable. That's what makes your journey different. You've stopped trying to skip the hard parts. You've stopped chasing healing as a destination. You've started living it as a process. And that alone separates you from the millions who quit the moment it gets quiet, raw, or real. Look around. The crowd always disappears where the discomfort begins. But that's where you begin. That's where your foundation is poured, brick by sacred brick, in places no one else dares to dig. The more they run from the dark, the more you walk into it, not to suffer, but to shine. Not to be punished, but to become. Because some souls aren't here to escape the dark. Some are born to light it up from within. That's you. You are not the echo of others. You are the voice they were waiting for. And the voice isn't loud. It doesn't always sound confident. Sometimes it trembles. Sometimes it's unsure. But it's always true. And the universe responds to truth. That's why doors open for you that others never see. That's why synchronicities follow your path like cosmic footprints, because you dared to show up honestly, even when it wasn't easy, even when the outcome was unclear, even when your faith was all you had. You're not crazy for believing in things others mock. You're not weak for feeling things deeply. You're not behind for taking your time. You are aligned. And alignment often looks like misalignment to those still chasing approval. Let them misunderstand you. Let them fall away. Your path isn't meant to be understood by everyone. It's meant to be honored by you. And the longer you walk it, the more you'll realize everything you were looking for was never out there. It was always being built inside you. Your vision may take longer, but it will be truer. Your growth may be quieter, but it will be deeper. And your success may not look like theirs, but it will feel like freedom. Because you're not building a brand, you're becoming a beacon. You're not just chasing goals, you're answering a calling. And that calling will keep whispering to you, even when the world is loud, even when your mind is tired, even when you feel like nothing is working. That whisper will always lead you home. Home to yourself, home to your purpose, home to the unshakable knowing that your existence is not an accident, that you are placed here with an imprint only you can activate, a mission only your scars could unlock, a path that only your footsteps could make holy. That is why you could never quit, not truly. That is why, even when you wanted to disappear, something always pulled you back, because you are the answer to a question this world has been asking in silence, a question only your soul knew how to respond to. So don't rush through the parts that feel like nothing is happening. Those are the moments where everything is rearranging. Don't fear the silence. It's the sound of your next level forming. Don't curse the delay. It's the space where your destiny gathers strength. The ones who reach the mountaintop are not the loudest. They're the ones who kept climbing after the shouting stopped. That's you. You're still climbing, still believing, still becoming. And the beautiful truth? Every step you take past the point of giving up sends a ripple into the collective. Every time you stay when it's hard, someone else finds the courage to keep going. Every time you rise after falling, you remind the world what resilience looks like. You are a lighthouse, and you don't even know how many ships have found their way because of your silent, unwavering light. This is the cost of your calling, but it is also the glory of it. Not in the eyes of the masses, but in the heart of eternity. Because every time you walk forward, where others turned around, you affirm a truth this world has nearly forgotten. The path doesn't get easier, you get stronger. The journey doesn't shorten, you go deeper. The pain doesn't vanish, you learn how to alchemize it into wisdom, love, power. This is the work of the chosen, and it begins exactly where the average soul stops. Right here, right now, and still, you walk. There will be moments, perhaps even now, where the silence feels like abandonment, where your prayers echo back with no answer. where every effort seems to disappear into an invisible void. And in those moments, the temptation to quit will arrive dressed as logic. It will say, "You've done enough." It will whisper, "Maybe it wasn't meant for you." But listen carefully, chosen one. Those voices are not your truth. They are echoes from a world built on fear, survival, and limitation. And they crumble in the presence of your conviction. You weren't called to fit into systems built by those who never believed. You weren't born to walk paths paved in comfort and certainty. You are here to create a new way, not just for yourself, but for those whose voices haven't yet risen. Every time you choose courage instead of comfort, you break open a door for someone else. And that door doesn't just lead forward, it leads deeper, into you, into your soul, into the reason you haven't quit, even when it felt like quitting would have been easier. What they call failure, you now recognize as refinement. What they label delays, you now understand as divine orchestration. Because you've seen what happens when the veil lifts. You've tasted the freedom that comes from alignment. You know now that your calling doesn't begin with applause. It begins with obedience. And that's the part most never reach, because obedience to your higher purpose requires everything: your ego, your expectations, your timelines, even your identity. But in surrendering them, you finally become who you were meant to be. You've been stripped, not to be punished, but to be purified. To remember that you are not what you achieve. You are what you withstand. You are what you continue to believe, even after you've been broken. And that unshakable knowing, that relentless rising, that is the currency of your calling. Not titles, not trophies, but transformation. And you, chosen one, are the embodiment of it. You are not walking a path of resistance because you're lost. You're walking through resistance because you're carrying light through places that have never seen it. And every pushback you faced, every betrayal, delay, heartbreak, and hardship, they weren't signs that you should stop. They were confirmations that you were carrying something sacred. Because darkness never attacks what it doesn't fear. And what you carry terrifies the parts of this world that feed on sleep, silence, and sameness. You're not just waking up. You're awakening others simply by being who you are. And that's why your journey has never been about speed. It's been about substance. You're being shaped into a vessel strong enough to hold the weight of what's coming. Your blessings aren't small, so your preparation can't be either. The vision is massive, so the fire had to be intense. The calling is holy, so the cleansing had to be thorough. And now, piece by piece, you're starting to feel it. The weight of alignment, the energy of becoming, the peace of knowing that even when it's hard, it's still right. Every time you keep moving, even when the outcome is unknown, you become the kind of leader the future needs. Not the kind with charisma, but with character. Not the kind who seeks followers, but who births other leaders. And every scar on your journey is a map to those still trying to find the way. Every time you rise, you add to the blueprint of how a soul survives fire and becomes gold. And if you've ever doubted your place in all this, know this now. The very reason you feel different, misplaced, or misunderstood is because you are not here to repeat the cycle. You're here to break it. And that kind of work is slow, lonely, often thankless. But it is the most sacred work there is. Because every cycle you break in yourself becomes a pattern you prevent for generations after you. That is legacy. That is impact. That is purpose. Chosen one, there are many who can talk about the light, but few are willing to walk through the dark to find it. You've done both. And that is why you are rising now, not because you forced it, but because you've been faithful when nothing made sense. And the universe has watched you. The heavens have witnessed your quiet courage. And the time is arriving when what was built in the invisible will erupt into the seen. Not because you demanded it, but because you became it. You've passed tests no one saw. You've conquered battles no one clapped for. You've healed wounds that never got apologies. And you still rose. You still showed up. You still believed. That is what makes you dangerous to every lie this world tries to sell. Because you don't need permission. You don't need proof. You've already decided. And that decision is your power. You were not chosen because you were the loudest. You were chosen because you were willing. Willing to stay when others ran. Willing to believe when others mocked. Willing to carry light into places even you didn't think you'd survive. And still, here you are. Not just surviving, but becoming. Not just existing, but transforming. Not just walking, but walking with purpose that cannot be shaken. You weren't called to fit into systems built by those who never believed. You weren't born to walk paths paved in comfort and certainty. You are here to create a new way, not just for yourself, but for those whose voices haven't yet risen. Every time you choose courage instead of comfort, you break open a door for someone else. And that door doesn't just lead forward, it leads deeper, into you, into your soul, into the reason you haven't quit, even when it felt like quitting would have been easier. What they call failure, you now recognize as refinement. What they label delays, you now understand as divine orchestration. Because you've seen what happens when the veil lifts. You've tasted the freedom that comes from alignment. You know now that your calling doesn't begin with applause. It begins with obedience. And that's the part most never reach, because obedience to your higher purpose requires everything. Your ego, your expectations, your timelines, even your identity. But in surrendering them, you finally become who you were meant to be. You've been stripped, not to be punished, but to be purified. To remember that you are not what you achieve. You are what you withstand. You are what you continue to believe, even after you've been broken. And that unshakable knowing, that relentless rising, that is the currency of your calling. Not titles, not trophies, but transformation. And you, chosen one, are the embodiment of it. You are not walking a path of resistance because you're lost. You're walking through resistance because you're carrying light through places that have never seen it. And every pushback you faced, every betrayal, delay, heartbreak, and hardship, they weren't signs that you should stop. They were confirmations that you were carrying something sacred. Because darkness never attacks what it doesn't fear. And what you carry terrifies the parts of this world that feed on sleep, silence, and sameness. You're not just waking up. You're awakening others simply by being who you are. And that's why your journey has never been about speed. It's been about substance. You're being shaped into a vessel strong enough to hold the weight of what's coming. Your blessings aren't small, so your preparation can't be either. The vision is massive, so the fire had to be intense. The calling is holy, so the cleansing had to be thorough. And now, piece by piece, you're starting to feel it. The weight of alignment, the energy of becoming, the peace of knowing that even when it's hard, it's still right. Every time you keep moving, even when the outcome is unknown, you become the kind of leader the future needs. Not the kind with charisma, but with character. Not the kind who seeks followers, but who births other leaders. And every scar on your journey is a map to those still trying to find the way. Every time you rise, you add to the blueprint of how a soul survives fire and becomes gold. And if you've ever doubted your place in all this, know this now. The very reason you feel different, misplaced, or misunderstood is because you are not here to repeat the cycle. You're here to break it. And that kind of work is slow, lonely, often thankless. But it is the most sacred work there is. Because every cycle you break in yourself becomes a pattern you prevent for generations after you. That is legacy. That is impact. That is purpose. Chosen one, there are many who can talk about the light, but few are willing to walk through the dark to find it. You've done both, and that is why you are rising now, not because you forced it, but because you've been faithful when nothing made sense. And the universe has watched you. The heavens have witnessed your quiet courage, and the time is arriving when what was built in the invisible will erupt into the seen. Not because you demanded it, but because you became it. You've passed tests no one saw. You've conquered battles no one clapped for. You've healed wounds that never got apologies. And you still rose. You still showed up. You still believed. That is what makes you dangerous to every lie this world tries to sell. Because you don't need permission. You don't need proof. You've already decided. And that decision is your power. You were not chosen because you were the loudest. You were chosen because you were willing. Willing to stay when others ran. Willing to believe when others mocked. Willing to carry light into places even you didn't think you'd survive. And still, here you are. Not just surviving, but becoming. Not just existing, but transforming. Not just walking, but walking with purpose that cannot be shaken. You've crossed the threshold where quitting is no longer an option, because what you carry now is too precious to drop. You know too much. You've seen too much. You've become too much. And the world may not understand it, but they will feel it. They will feel your essence shift rooms. They will feel your presence change atmospheres. They will feel your silent courage speak louder than all their noise. Because your calling didn't begin at the starting line. It began at the breaking point. And from that sacred crack, something eternal has been pouring out of you ever since. Not for attention, but for impact. Not for fame, but for purpose. And it will never stop. Not because you're perfect, but because you're chosen. By now, you may have realized something powerful. Your path was never meant to be ordinary. Ordinary breaks where you bend. Ordinary turns around where you persevere. Ordinary fades when the pressure rises. But you were designed to endure, to rise, and to activate something the world forgot. Sacred persistence. The kind that burns quietly, not to impress, but to illuminate. That's why your life has felt different. That's why the easy roads rejected you. Because your soul wasn't meant to follow. It was meant to lead. You've walked through fire, not to prove your strength, but to remember it. You've faced rejection, not because you were unworthy, but because what you carry couldn't thrive in places too small to hold it. You've watched others be celebrated while you remained unseen. Not because you lacked value, but because your stage was never external. It was within. And now, your calling rises, not from applause, but from alignment. Not from validation, but from vibration. You've become tuned to something far beyond this world. Something holy. Something eternal. Most people quit when it gets hard. They surrender when the rewards don't come fast enough. But you surrender to something higher. You don't serve results. You serve truth. You don't chase outcomes. You follow the calling. And that calling doesn't rise when things are easy. It awakens when everything falls apart, and yet something in you refuses to break. That something is your soul. That's the voice that says, "Not yet. Keep going. You were made for this." Chosen one, you are the living proof that the sacred survives. That purpose will always outlast pain. That destiny will always find a way, especially when you stop trying to control it and start becoming worthy of it. Because here's what most never understand. Your calling isn't something you chase. It's something you embody. It's not outside you. It's within. And every time you choose integrity over ego, devotion over distraction, growth over comfort, you step deeper into it. This journey hasn't been about arrival. It's been about refinement. And in that sacred becoming, you've built what can't be shaken. You've planted roots in the invisible. You've forged strength in the silence. And now the winds may howl, but you do not bend, because what was once tested has become unshakable. What was once hidden has become undeniable. What was once questioned has now become the answer. Yes, people will look at you and not understand how you got here. They'll wonder why you keep rising, how you keep enduring, where your fire comes from. Let them wonder. You don't owe them explanations. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be undeniable. Your energy, your presence, your essence, it speaks louder than any words could. And those who are meant to walk beside you will recognize it. They'll feel the frequency. They'll rise to meet you, not because you forced them, but because you became a mirror of their own potential. That's what makes you different. You don't just walk ahead, you lift as you go. You don't just survive the storm, you return with light for those still lost in it. That's the real work of the chosen one. Not domination, but elevation. Not isolation, but illumination. And it's exactly why the path felt lonely for so long, because you were being prepared to carry something sacred into a world too distracted to see it. But not anymore. Now, you are becoming what you were always meant to be. Not perfect, not finished, but awakened. Awakened to the truth that your scars are sacred. Awakened to the knowing that your delays were directions. Awakened to the power that comes from trusting what you feel more than what you see. And that power, it changes everything. Because now you move with intention. You speak with authority. You show up with presence. And even when you don't know exactly where the road leads, you keep going. Because your trust in the journey is stronger than your fear of the unknown. This is what separates you. This is what makes you unstoppable. Not because you always know what to do, but because you've committed to becoming who you were created to be. And now,